So we're going to talk about online presentations again. We are even hearing that some major events are going to go online, and that's very interesting. But that's showing us one thing, and it's the fact that online presentations are here to stay, which means that when this whole situation is over, probably people are still going to deliver presentations online, and not just still, but they're going to take them to a totally new level. So we decided to do this webinar also because I believe that it will be essential to you and your success to have these skills. For those of you, and as I can see, it's actually the majority, for those of you who were not at the webinar, maybe it would make sense first to do a quick recap. So what we discussed basically in just a few sentences, we talked about first the tool. So make sure that you know the tool that you're going to be using for your presentation. Make sure that you know how to unmute yourself, the video, how to start a video, how to stop the video, all of these important tasks so that you are confident when you have to share a screen, you know where to share it. All of these like small specifics on the tool that you're going to be using. The second thing that we actually discussed was around the files. So if you have files that you want to share, make sure that they are collected in, for example, one folder, or you know how to reach to them easily. There is nothing more frustrating than people trying to find files on their computer. So always make sure that you have your files in a very easy to find location. The third thing, Theodora already said it, was of the icons that you have on your desktop. So if you're the type of person who has 300 icons on their desktop, just go to your desktop, right click, then go to view, and you need to untick the show desktop icons field. You will have just a very clear screen, and that shows nothing but professionalism. No one needs to see all of your 300 icons that you have on the desktop. What we also discussed that, for example, you need to turn off all of your notifications. If you have Viber or WhatsApp or like many softwares on your PC or on your Mac, make sure that you turn off all notifications. No one needs to see your chats with friends while you're doing a presentation online, or even that's very applicable for a live presentation where you have an audience in front of you. So always make sure that you turn off your notifications. We discussed a little bit the topic about transitions and animations. When it comes to online presentations, we always advise to refrain or to use like a very small amount of transitions and animations. So because of the fact that usually the internet connection is not the best, and you don't know how good the internet connection of the people on the other side is. So avoid using very complex transitions. I would say just use even fade and even appear for an animation, because it will look like fade online. We talked a little bit about the setup, the fact that you need to find a silent room or a room that is as calm as possible with good lighting. If possible, use natural lighting, of course. If that's not possible, you can use a lamp or just the lights in the room to make it brighter. And last but not least, we talked about the webcam and the mic. So what's important is to make sure that you look into the webcam like I'm doing now. And I assume that, and I'm sure that you actually know that I'm talking to you. I'm not talking to my laptop, because if I'm not looking at the webcam, what you see how that looks, it looks like I'm looking at myself and I'm not talking to you. And we talked a little bit about posture and whether you need to be standing up or to sit down. So that's, by the way, something. So I talked about standing up. However, there is one thing that you need to pay attention to. So if you're doing demos, for example, or if you need to use your laptop a lot during the session, you can sit. However, when you're sitting, like for example, now I'm sitting because I will be showing demos during the session. So as I'm sitting though, I'm in a position which leaves my back fully straight so that I don't sound as I'm sitting, because if I sound like the usual way I'm sitting, I would sound like this. So my voice actually goes down and I don't sound as confident as I would when I sit straight like this. And the important part, people need to see your hands. So it's better for them to see you from like from your belly, let's say, up, so they can see your hands and they can see the movement and a little bit of body language. So just to introduce my helper today, I have invited my colleague Boris, who is also on the call. He's going to moderate the comments as he's already doing that. Boris, can you hear us? You can say hi.
Hey everyone. I will be your helper today for sure. Yes. So please feel free to ask any question and I'll interrupt Eva any way I like.
Yes, like he always likes to do. But anyway, Boris, I'm sure is going to also come up and chime in with some interesting insights around remote presentations, because for the past few weeks, we've been working with a lot of clients on a lot of online and remote presentations. You can call them both ways. And we, even ourselves, we are constantly learning and finding new things. So it's a topic that it can take, I believe, probably 24 or 48 hours to talk just about remote presentations. There are so many specifics around that, around even psychology around remote presentations. We were reading a lot of materials on that matter. But again, we don't have that much time. So even though I shared a lot of tips last time, there are a lot of things to be shared actually today. So I suggest that we jump into the tips. And as we always do, the first part when we build a presentation, we start with the story part, right? So we divide presentations in, we kind of say that presentations have three parts. It's the story, the design, and then the delivery. So we always start first with the story. What do we want to say? Basically, what do we want to share with that audience that we have in front of us or in front of the computer? And that itself can turn into a 24-hour talk. It's a totally big topic by itself. However, a lot of people are asking us, and maybe the number one question that we get, not just for remote presentations, but also for live presentations, is how can I create a compelling story? How can I create basically content, and the words that I'm going to say, how can they make people act? Again, that's a huge topic by itself. We have something cooking up in that regard. In any way, in brief, what you need to know about stories and what makes a story really great and compelling and a story that makes people act is the story that has contrasts. And what do we understand by contrasts? Contrasts in stories are, we can divide them in, let's say, three levels. The first one is the content level. And if you ask me what is the content level, that's just imagine it presenting a problem and then presenting a solution. That's in brief, like very basic, what a contrast on content level means. I will show you an example now. I will show you a presentation that we've done for a company called 500 Labs. Most of you, if you have been already on our events, probably you have seen this deck. What I want to show here is the following. So I'm just going to play a little bit from that deck so that you can see it. Probably, and because of the fact that I mentioned that you need to use simpler animations, here it might be lagging a bit on your side because it's using that fancy transition called Morph. We have, by the way, another webinar on that topic, which was really popular this month. But in any way, what we present here, I will show it here, are three problems. So we have the first problem called connections, data models, and messages. So we see the problem with red. Then we see that same problem with green because we show the solution. What the speaker is actually saying, we have this problem now in the present, this is what is happening, and this is how it needs to be. Then we present a second problem. We explain what the problem is, then we say what the opportunity is. Well, you may say that in general, what we can do is present like the three problems like this. We say we have actually three problems and then we have three solutions. Well, yes, but then you don't get that contrast. So you don't get that roller coaster around problem and solution. So quite an important point. However, when it comes to online presentations, not much has changed there if you think about it. So these contrasts are still valid for an online presentation. Like we still need to present problems and solutions. Even we were talking with a client last week that many presentations actually fail because people are usually presenting just the solution. So let's say you have a situation where you go in front of your boss and you say, we need to do this. It can look like this. It is really cool to be like this. However, you haven't presented the actual problem. You don't present what you are solving, right? So that's very, very important point to make. And in terms of how this changed for an online presentation, it didn't change a lot. We still need to keep it in order to make sure that our stories are emotional roller coasters. Another level of contrast is actually the emotional level. And by emotional, the way you can imagine it is, for example, let's take a presentation where you present facts about your company and you say how many years of experience your company has, how many markets you're operating in, and then your presentation actually stops there. So you have just facts, and we need to have emotional contrast in order to reach a better level of engagement. So I will show you again very quick example of what emotional contrast would mean. Very, very simple example. So that's a presentation that we did for Novotel. It was, I think, 2 or 3 years ago. In any way, I'm just going to go through it, not going to mention what exactly the speaker is saying here. However, I want you to see this slide. So on this slide, Kamen, the speaker, is actually talking about plus 500. So he's asking the audience who are plus 500. And then he starts explaining what 500 plus 500 is, what kind of company that is, how many employees work there, what kind of markets they operate on, all of these facts and kind of logical examples that people still need to hear. However, what happens next is that he says, let us tell you a story about what happened with us and plus 500. So he's telling a compelling, even I would say personal story for what happened between those two companies. And that's the emotional contrast. It's a roller coaster around what were the challenges, then what were the opportunities. So it's a combination also between the emotions and the content that he's sharing. And from that perspective, the emotional contrast is also something that we need to take in mind. For example, you might be showing an Excel table. Well, after this Excel table, and if represents results that are impacting a person's life, you may want to share a story on how that could work. So there are many ways how you can think of emotional contrasts. And again, speaking about these types of contrasts, the content and the emotional level, not much has changed in the online environment. They are still valid as they were in the live presentations. What has changed though are the delivery contrasts. And by delivery contrasts, what we mean are, for example, all of the questions, all of the demos that you're doing, all of the props are, for example, physical objects that speakers show on stage. I assume you, or if you have not, you need to see that. One of my favorite TED Talks is the TED Talk of Bill Gates, when he was talking about malaria, and he released many mosquitoes in the room that were transferring malaria. Of course, they were not transferring it, but he presented it that way. So that's a prop when you present a physical object to your audience. And if we imagine like every speaker, when they speak in front of an audience, they use their body, they use their voice, they may sit on a chair, they may stand up. There are many things that you can do in order to reach delivery contrast. They play videos, for example. A lot of speakers play videos, and these are the things that actually are having more change in the online world, because now when you sit in front of your computer, you cannot use all of these. However, think about it. You can still use demos like I just did. I showed you 2 presentations. So I made that change between you looking at me and you looking at the screen because I'm showing you something. You may use polls. If you know the tool, like what we discussed on the first part of this webinar in February, you need to know the software that you're going to be using. Like, for example, Zoom has polls, but you need to prepare them in advance. And when you prepare your polls, you can use that to engage your audience. You can use video. However, with the video, it might be a little bit trickier because the connection on the other side, if it's not really good, they might not see the video the way that it should be. So the best way to do that probably would be just to send the link. And by the way, that's totally fine. It takes people's attention to send the link and tell them, just watch the video for 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, whatever the length of that video is. And then we come back to the talk, to the presentation. So that's also an option, and you can do that. In general, people are not using those opportunities when they present live, but I definitely think you need to equip yourself with as many contrasts as possible. The thing though that is of really great importance when you're doing a remote presentation and when people are looking at you is your voice. When we talk about voice, that's the only thing that takes us closer to our audience, and that's the thing that people understand from us. You know, even if you have a camera, your voice is really important in a remote presentation, and it's really important that you keep people engaged through your voice. What that means is that you cannot afford to go monotone. Many people ask me, like, what can I do? Is there something that I can do so that I can improve that? Well, there are a couple of things that you can do. What we recommend is you can take your favorite book, like whatever book, it might be a children's book, whatever book you have and whatever book you like, you can take it and just mark a couple of words. And when you try to read that paragraph, you can try to emphasize first on 1 word, second time on 2 words, third time on 3 words, and make sure that you put that emphasis on the words that you have already marked. That's really helpful to help you really develop that vocal variety, as it's called. We use a lot one app that's called Ori. I think Boris is doing a great job as my helper, by the way, and replying to many of the questions already in the chat. He's going to put the link to an app called Ori. I was doing a test a few days ago, and what happened is that I noticed that the app can give you the percentage of your energy. So it's kind of the same. It listens to your voice and it tells you what was the energy that you used during your talk. So for example, mine back then it was 60. I didn't find that the best, but still it gave me a lot of insight on how I can improve that. So you can go and check it out. Of course, the other thing that you definitely need to check out is the presentation coach. That's a very cool feature that you can find in the online version of Office 365. And even we checked it and it's available also for the free version. So you even don't have to pay, which is fantastic. All right, by the way, it has a free and paid version. So both of these tools, and I can say one is app, the other one is a functionality. So both of them are really great. You can test it and you can see how that would work for you. For example, they calculate, for example, how many times you say, etc. how long are the pauses that you make, what is the average speed of your talk, which is fantastic because sometimes I have the tendency to talk a little bit too fast. So I'm already exercising that part, and I'm trying to slow down a little bit the pace of my talk. I just saw that Georgi said just read more often children fairy tales, like you read it to a small kid, and that's true. Like if you have a kid at home, you probably read fairy tales every evening. So that's a fantastic way to practice vocal variety, indeed. Now that we know a little bit more about the contrasts on the story part, and again, that's a topic that we can cover in 24 or 48-hour session webinars, let's go to the design part. And that's the part which now becomes very important. If you think about it, and if you try to remember, there are presentations that probably you have seen, like TED Talks or speeches that you really, really liked, that kind of touched you in a very, very nice way, and you cannot forget those speeches. And they didn't use slides. In an online environment, that's also possible. However, now what the audience sees is, in the best way, your webcam. They see you, they hear your voice, and as we've already discussed, you need to practice how to make sure that you're not monotone, and then they see your slides. So the visual part now becomes a little bit more important than what it was before. Now, what I want to show you is another demo, just a very, very simple way how you can transform your slides and how you can even make your slides more engaging to your audience. So what I was saying is that you can, if we talk about presentations, we talk about story, design, and delivery. So we have three things on the slide here, but I have one idea. So I'm going to talk about presentations, which consist of those three things. The one idea per slide is still valid for all presentations that you do. Like, it doesn't have another rule. However, what we advise and what we always consider doing, and what we advise our clients to do, is to, for example, present like this, where we first talk about the story, then we talk about the design, and then we talk about the delivery, right? So these three things, they come up on the same slide. However, we've used a very simple animation. Like we've used, I think it was Fate. Our designers have used Fate. Yes, so it's a Fate animation. Very, very simple to do. However, what you can do when it comes to online presentations, there is something that I want to repeat probably for the 80th time. The number of slides doesn't matter. And that's especially applicable for online presentations. Take a look at this. What if we present that same idea in the following way? Story, design, delivery. As you can see, these are actually three separate slides. And you can use that in an online environment to create a bigger and constant visual change. What I want to say here is that if you can, try and use many slides for your decks. I'm not trying to like give you an idea to use a slide for every second, but if you have, for example, three things on a slide, try to put them on separate slides. It would make a better visual change, and it would make the people look at the screen. It would make your audience interested to see what's coming up, right? And that makes a lot of sense, right? Another thing that is super important to know when you do presentations online is how complex are the images that you use. Like, for example, here, you might have really good internet connection, or you might be somewhere here in, for example, in Bulgaria, we have very good internet connection, but that's not always the case in all parts of the world. What happened, I think a week or two ago, I saw a webinar where a person was showing many beautiful photos. They were from San Francisco. So it was the Golden Gate Bridge, fantastic photos. However, the connection was not good and we couldn't see the photos. They were all blurry. Right now, I'm not even sure how you see the photos that I'm showing. It might be a total mess because, for example, that one is a grid of really nice photos of mountains. However, they are very complex in terms of details that we see on those pictures. And especially make sure that you don't use super complex animations or transitions. Like this one, for example, that's a morph transition. I would say it's subtle. However, it's a little bit tricky whether that's visible enough. So try to use less complex pictures, like pictures that have a few details on them, not that many. Like for example, here you can see all of the bushes that are on the rocks and many things that people might not see on the other side. So try to use simpler images and don't use complex transitions. And that's a very simple way how you can actually revamp your presentations for the online world. So now that we've actually discussed the part around the story, the design, it comes the most complex part because it's the part that's changed the most when it comes to remote presentations. That's the delivery part. And the delivery part has changed a lot. Now that we have already created that compelling story, we have great design, we have used many slides potentially for our deck, we need to make sure that we prepare ourselves for a good delivery. And the first thing that I would like to start is again the setup. So how do you position yourself for a good online presentation, especially when you have a camera? First and most important thing, again, quiet room or as quiet as possible. I have a dog, it's locked in the other room. That's not always possible though. And we've seen some, I would say, really sweet cases when we had a client trying to present to us. However, his kid was trying to enter the room. Don't get into that situation of that professor. It was this famous video of the BBC where all his children went into the room. Just say it. I mean, it's better if you even warn your audience that they might hear some noises, or a child might walk in. Even though I would suggest, if that's possible to avoid, it would be better. Then it's the nice spot. Like try to find in your house, try to find a nice spot. It might have a painting in the back, but make sure that the painting doesn't have like naked people or things like that, because I've seen that one also. Try to find a background that it's not too distracting, but at the same time, it's not too dull, which means that people won't be staring at everything that you have in the back and wondering, oh, what's that picture? Oh, what does it say on that certificate? Just try to find a place which is, I would say, kind of neutral in terms of distraction, but still nice enough. As I like to call it, it's Instagrammable background. But don't use, and please don't use the backgrounds that Zoom and Teams, for example, they propose backgrounds with flamingos, with like dogs, giraffes, all kinds of stuff. Please don't do that. I mean, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look professional, and it kind of looks silly. And it's better not to do it. Just try to find a place which looks nice. Even if you try to look formal, don't go with a fully blank wall. Just try to have a little bit more depth behind you so that people can see that you are a real person that sits in a real room and is in basically the same position as they are. So try to do that. Don't use a fully blank white wall, because even on the camera, you cannot see how far away you are from the computer. It makes it hard for the person looking at you. And of course, the lighting. If it's possible, try to use natural lighting. Try to find like good spot where the light is nice. If not, just use a lamp, or you can put it on the right side or on the left side, or you can just switch on the lights in the room. So that's definitely a must. And regarding the tools that you are using, of course, the most important ones are the mic and the camera. Now, most of the laptops that are on the market have pretty decent, I would say, mics and cameras. Even I think the MacBook Pro, the latest version, has a really good camera. However, if you are presenting like some of us are mentioning already, that they present a couple of times a week and they do important presentations. If you do that, I would highly suggest that you invest a little bit in that kind of technology that would make everything so much nicer. I fully guarantee you on that. Now, I can give you some suggestions based on what we've tried and what we use during our trainings and our webinars as well, like what we do use now. For example, we currently use the AKG studio mics. These are the mics that we use for our podcasts as well. I would say they are a bit on the expensive side, though. If you don't want to spend that much time, something that we know works well, it works well for podcasts, it works well for webinars, online meetings, etc., is a microphone called Blue Yeti. So I think the brand is called Blue and the model is called Yeti. I think it's something around $100. Boris is probably going to post a link for that one as well, so that you can see it and check for yourself. And if you don't want to spend money on that, even though I would highly suggest, if you present often, you can just use headphones. Sometimes they work mirrors. And an app that I used recently and that I tested, it's called Crisp AI. So that's an app that it has a free and paid version, but what it does is it basically reduces the noise around you. It knows where your voice is. It knows where is your voice. So it focuses only on your voice, and some noises that you have around you are actually not getting heard from the people on the other end. So that's really cool. You can try it. I think it has 7 or 14 days free trial period. So try it, see if it works for you. I know some of you are stuck at home with children who also study. So if it's noisy around you and if you kind of want to make things a little bit less noisy, try it. It works. For me, it works really well. I would say I was a little bit even surprised. And when it comes to the webcam, again, most of the laptops have, I would say, pretty decent quality of the webcam. Right now, the best one on the market and the one that we are using is the Logitech 4K Brio. It's a really, really good device. You can do many things with it, like change the angle and the position. Basically, you can put it on almost anything. It's a great device. A little bit on the expensive side. I think they have a model that is not that expensive, so it's not the 4K, but it's the HD version. So it's really good. You can go and check it out. Many providers on the market are giving good options for webcams. The Logitech is a fantastic choice. We're saying and we're mentioning Logitech a lot because we use the clickers. For example, their clickers are the best ones on the market, and we use the one that is like the most expensive one. We use their cameras. So if someone from Logitech is watching, we are open to sponsorships. And last but not least, you need to make sure that you have good internet connection. So if it's possible and if you can, make sure that you put your laptop on the RG45 port. That's how it's called. However, most of the laptops that are coming up now, they don't have that port. It's the standard port for the LAN cable. And if you don't have that port, I think it's like $5 or $10 or something like that. You can get a converter for USB, USB-C or USB 3, or like whatever USB you have, you can get a converter for that, and it's really, really cheap. If you cannot do it, though, there is always an option to just make sure you are very close to the router and make sure that the connection that you get is the fastest as possible. Now, last but not least, what we always say to our customers for presentations that they deliver on stage, that they deliver remotely, that's a rule for every scenario. Make sure that you prepare for the what if case. And what does that mean? Is you need to make sure that you have a backup of everything, basically. So, for example, think of the case, what happens if your laptop dies? Like, for example, now let me show you what I have here. I have another laptop that I just switch the water. I have another laptop that I have already logged into the webinar, which is with another profile. So in case something happens to my laptop, I can use this one and I can immediately switch to that laptop without losing you. I mean, you don't have to like ask your audience to wait, or the one which is worse, tell them, well, I don't know what happened. I guess I'm not going to present today. So that's not an excuse. You always need to have a backup option. I understand, and I fully understand that it's not always the case where people have two laptops. However, if it's a really, really important presentation, try to find laptop from a colleague or even personal laptop so that you can make sure you have a backup. What's more though, is that this laptop, for example, it's connected to my iPhone. So it's connected to, I don't know if you're going to see it. Yes, it's connected to my iPhone. So if something happens with the internet, I can use my iPhone's 4G so that I can connect to the webinar again and without causing any disruption. Yes, maybe the audio and the camera is not going to be that good, but it's a solution. I mean, it's a workaround. So super important to think about this stuff. What happens if your mic fails? Like I have my earphones here. I have my AirPods that are already connected to my laptop, and I just need to switch the audio from the AKG mic to my earphone, to my headphones, and everything works well. So no disruption again. What happens if my camera dies? Well, of course, I can use the camera of my laptop, or if it dies completely, if the camera on my laptop dies, I can use the one on the other laptop, which I think that's a very probably scenario that won't happen. But again, you start thinking about stuff when you imagine all the what if scenarios. So there are many things that can happen. Just make sure you're prepared. What happens if you, for example, if your mouse dies? Well, have a spare one. I have two. You can think of all of the things that might fail, what to do, like what is the backup plan. Always think about those. What I want you to do now is all of the tricks that I shared. I believe some of them are really easy fixes even to your current presentations or the setup that you have for your current presentations. Go ahead and do it. Test it. Do whatever you can to make sure that you deliver as effective as possible presentation. That will make everything really different. And your audience, trust me, is going to love it. And they're really going to appreciate that. So go ahead, do it. Make sure that you kind of check our social media. We have account on probably every social media platform out there. We have a free online course that is currently free. It's free up until the April the 30th or 31st, the 30th. I think it's the 30th. So it's free up until then with the promo code. Make sure you go and check it out. We have like this huge red bar on our website, 356labs.com. So go and check it out, watch the course. I definitely think now it's the time to upgrade your skills and go like leverage your presentations. So go ahead, check that one out. We have a lot of things coming up. I won't hide. We have many new stuff coming up. I'm already mentioned that we're cooking something in regards to the story part of the presentations. So that's something that is you're probably going to see very soon. And last but not least, make sure that you subscribe for our newsletter and make sure that you take a look at our podcast. Something cool is coming. Because of the fact that many people are now delivering online presentations, we decided to do a whole series of podcasts on online presentations. So the next, not this month, but next month, you're going to have you're going to see and hear a lot of content on online presentations. So make sure that you go ahead and check that one out. Again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was really a pleasure to see so many people. Thank you for being with us and for all the questions and the whole interest. Again, as Boris said, we are going to download the chat and the questions, and we're going to make sure that we follow up with everyone so that we can answer everything that was asked today. So thank you so much and hope to see you soon. Bye.